The envelope arrived on a gray Tuesday morning, thick cream paper sealed with a wax serpent. Evelyn Cross recognized that serpent instantly. Whitestone Manor. Her father's house. A place she had sworn never to see again. For a long while she didn't touch it. The kettle hissed, the radio murmured about rain, but her gaze stayed fixed on the envelope, on the past. When she finally slid it open, a single sheet slid out. Miss Evelyn Cross. Your father, Charles Whitestone Cross, is gravely ill. You are named sole heir under specific conditions to be discussed in person. Kindly respond within 5 days. Arthur Pierce, ESQ, Holbrook and Pierce Attorneys. Sole heir. It had to be a mistake. Her father had sons, 2 of them, and an estate worth millions. He wouldn't leave it to the daughter he'd exiled 24 years ago. Unless it was bait. That night she searched the house online. The manor looked the same, stone walls, black iron gates, trimmed gardens like soldiers in formation. She shut the laptop. Her hands shook. Don't do it, she whispered to herself. But some invisible thread pulled tight inside her chest, a thread called unfinished business. Whitestone Manor. The drive from the station wound through pine forest and fog. The gates opened as she approached, creaking like an old throat clearing secrets. Inside, portraits watched her pass, stern faces of ancestors who judged for centuries. The marble floors gleamed, the air smelled of polish and distance. Arthur Pierce waited by the fireplace. Miss Cross, he said gently, your father is upstairs. Before you see him, you should understand his terms. Evelyn folded her arms. Go on. You must reside here for 30 days and fulfill his final requests. Only then will the inheritance be released. What kind of requests? He hesitated. He wishes for your public forgiveness. She laughed, low and bitter. Forgiveness? That's rich. Pierce's gaze softened. He believes peace can cleanse the family name. Her smile faded. My forgiveness won't buy him peace. The dying king. Upstairs, her father lay in a vast bed, thin as parchment, eyes still sharp. So, he rasped, the prodigal daughter returns. I'm here for answers, not absolution. He smiled faintly. Then you've already taken the bait. Bait for what? There are things only you can set right. His voice was almost a whisper. But remember, Evelyn, don't go into the West Wing at night. Why? His breath rattled. Because that's where the dead still talk. That night, as wind scraped the shutters, she heard it, soft, deliberate, unmistakable. Evelyn. Her blood turned to ice. The whisper came again, thin as smoke. Evelyn. Her name drifted through the dark hallway, brushing her skin like a cold breath. The West Wing door was cracked open, pale light spilled across the floorboards. The air smelled of polish, dust, and something sweeter, decayed, like lilies left too long in water. Her father's warning echoed, don't go into the West Wing at night. But the voice was calling. She pushed the door open. Hinges moaned, dust stirred. The lamp she carried threw a narrow circle of gold that cut through the gloom. The corridor beyond was lined with portraits, grim women in lace collars, each staring straight ahead. Someone had slashed one painting clean through the eyes. Who's there? She whispered. Silence. Then a faint scratch came from the far end of the hall. Her breath quickened. The sound was frantic, desperate. She followed it, step by cautious step, until she reached a narrow door she didn't remember. The knob felt icy. When she turned it, the scratching stopped. Inside was a small bedroom, bare but for a chair and a covered dressing table. A thin curtain fluttered though the window was shut. On the table sat a jewelry box carved with serpents. The lid was open. Inside, resting on velvet, lay a gold locket. Evelyn lifted it carefully. The metal was cold as bone. She flicked it open, and froze. A miniature portrait of a young woman smiled up at her. Same eyes, same mouth, same scar above the left brow. Beneath the picture, faded ink spelled a name, Margaret Cross, 1973 to 1990. Evelyn's pulse stumbled. There's never been a Margaret in the family. The whisper came again, closer, almost beside her ear. Find me. She spun around. Empty room. The lamp flickered once, twice, then steadied. Her gaze dropped to the floorboards, and she saw it, a dark stain running beneath the rug, shaped like a spill that had seeped and dried long ago. Heart hammering, she backed into the hall. At the corridor's far end, a figure stood half in shadow, a tall man, shoulders rigid, face hidden. Who are you? She called. He didn't answer. He simply turned and walked through the adjoining door. Evelyn ran after him, but when she reached it, the handle wouldn't budge. She pressed her ear to the wood. A click. The flick of a lighter. Then a man's voice, low and weary, "You shouldn't have come back." The light in the hallway dimmed, and the portrait seemed to lean forward, listening. Evelyn backed away, clutching the locket to her chest. Somewhere behind her, the whisper returned, no longer pleading, but sharp with warning. Don't trust them. The lamp went out. The next morning, Evelyn woke to the sound of rain. It hammered the windows like restless fingers, and for a second she wondered if last night had been a dream. The whisper. The locked door. The man's voice. But the locket on her bedside table proved it had been real. She dressed quickly, dark jeans, white blouse, hair pulled back, armor for the day. Then she went downstairs to the study. Her father's old study was a cathedral of mahogany and secrets. Books lined the walls, the air heavy with the scent of old tobacco and dust. Behind the desk sat a man who looked entirely at home, tall, clean-shaven, mid-40s, in a charcoal suit. He turned when she entered. Evelyn. She froze. Who are you? James. He smiled, and the resemblance struck her, her father's eyes, her mother's sharp jaw. It's been a long time, little sister. The word sister came out like a taunt. I didn't know you were here, she said coldly. Father asked me to stay. He wants the family together again before, he let the sentence trail off, glancing toward the ceiling where the sick man slept. She walked closer. You were in the West Wing last night, weren't you? He blinked. What are you talking about? I saw you. Heard you. Evelyn, you must have dreamed it. The West Wing's been sealed for decades. She dropped the locket on the desk. It clinked like a bullet. Then explain this. James picked it up, his face shifting as he opened it. Where did you find this? In the West Wing. He shut it quickly, jaw tightening. That room is off limits. Why? Because Margaret died there, he said flatly. 30 years ago. She was our half-sister. Evelyn's breath caught. Half-sister? Our father's first child. She died before you were born. Mother forbade us to speak of her. Evelyn stared at him, the pieces beginning to twist into something darker. How did she die? James met her gaze without blinking. She fell from the balcony. Or so they said. And you don't believe that? He looked down at the locket, thumb tracing the serpent emblem. I believe Father's lies go deeper than any of us ever knew. A thunderclap shook the windows. Evelyn felt the chill crawl up her spine again. "What are you afraid of, James?" she asked softly. He glanced toward the hallway, then lowered his voice. "That father didn't bring you here to forgive him, Evelyn. He brought you here to finish what Margaret started." Her pulse quickened. And what exactly did she start? He gave a hollow smile. "A war." After breakfast, Evelyn walked the house. Every step echoed off marble like the place was swallowing sound. Rain still pressed against the windows, soft but relentless. Her father hadn't stirred since dawn. The nurses said he slept fitfully, muttering names under his breath. When Evelyn asked what names, they only shook their heads. She needed air. Instead, she found the library. The room was enormous, 2 floors of dark wood and whispering paper. Dust motes floated through light streaming from tall windows. It had always been her favorite room as a child. Back then, she believed knowledge could save her. Now, she was less sure. At the far wall, a portrait hung crooked. When she straightened it, something thin fluttered down, a photograph, old and curled at the edges. She turned it over. 3 children stood in front of the manor's fountain, James, Michael, and a girl she didn't recognize. The girl was maybe 16, with soft curls and eyes so alive they seemed to move even on paper. On the back, written in faded blue ink, "Margaret, summer 1990. Evelyn sat heavily on a chair, her throat tight. Margaret looked so much like her. Footsteps creaked behind her. Digging through the past already? It was Michael, her other brother, older now, heavier, wearing his arrogance like a tailored suit. He poured himself a drink from the sideboard. "I didn't think you'd actually come back." "I didn't have much of a choice," Evelyn said. "Oh, there's always a choice." He sipped, watching her. "Unless father's holding the strings again." She slid the photograph into her pocket. "Tell me about Margaret." He smirked. "Ah. The ghost of Whitestone. You've met her, then?" Evelyn stiffened. "What do you mean?" "You heard her, didn't you? They all do, eventually. Whispering in the halls, calling our names. You think that's funny?" He shrugged. "She was father's favorite. Until she wasn't. Fell from the balcony one night, broke her neck. They said accident, but," he swirled his drink, watching the liquid spin. "In this house, accidents are just murders with better PR." Evelyn felt her pulse thudding. Why did father keep her death a secret? "Guilt," Michael said simply. "Or fear. Maybe both." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do yourself a favor, little sister. Leave before you end up like her." She didn't move. "Like Margaret?" "No," his eyes darkened. "Like mother." He walked away before she could ask what he meant. Evelyn looked toward the rain-slick window. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the reflection of 3 figures in the glass, herself, Michael in the doorway, and behind them both, for just a second, the faint outline of a young woman with curls. When she turned, the space behind her was empty. Rain eased by afternoon, leaving the air sharp and wet. Evelyn stood at the library's tall windows, staring at the terrace beyond. Somewhere up there, 30 years ago, Margaret Cross had fallen. She slipped through the corridors until she reached the west stairwell. The banister gleamed, recently polished, as if someone still cared about appearances here. The west balcony was smaller than she remembered, a half-circle of cracked marble, its balustrade streaked with moss. Beyond it, the vineyards rolled away under a silver sky. Kneeling, she traced the cracks in the stone. One section looked newer, patched. Repaired. Hiding something. Her fingers brushed a faint reddish stain caught in the crevice. Old, but not forgotten. Behind her, a voice said quietly, "I wouldn't touch that." Evelyn turned. Arthur Pierce stood in the doorway, coat damp from the rain. "You shouldn't be up here," he said. "Neither should Margaret have been," she replied. "Tell me, Mr. Pierce, what really happened to her?" He hesitated. "Accidents in this family rarely stay buried." "That's not an answer." He sighed, removing his glasses to clean them. "I was a junior associate then, newly hired. There was talk. Your father and Margaret had a terrible argument the night she died. She threatened to expose something. But the police called it a fall, and your father made sure it stayed that way." "What was she going to expose?" Pierce met her eyes, his voice low. "Ask yourself why your father keeps that west wing locked, Miss Cross. Some doors close for good reason." She looked past him at the hall's dark mouth. "And if the reason was murder?" He slid his glasses back on. "Then you'll find out soon enough. This house has a way of confessing eventually." He turned to leave but paused. "Be careful with James and Michael. They aren't here just to mourn. They have interests." "I'm not afraid of them." "You should be," Pierce murmured. "Fear keeps you alive at Whitestone." After he left, Evelyn looked once more over the balcony. A single magpie perched on the balustrade, black eyes gleaming. It cawed once, harsh and lonely, before taking flight into the gray. Lightning flickered, and for a heartbeat she saw a figure reflected in the wet marble floor, someone standing behind her. She spun around. No one. Only the wind slipping through the cracks, whispering something she couldn't quite catch. She leaned closer to the stone, and this time she heard it clearly. "Forgive him." Her stomach twisted. "Margaret," she whispered. A gust of wind slammed the balcony doors shut behind her. Evelyn ran to them, pulling at the handle, but it wouldn't move. The lock had turned from the inside. Someone, or something, had sealed her in. Evelyn rattled the balcony handle until her palms burned. The lock didn't budge. Wind whipped her hair across her face, the curtains behind her snapping like sails. "Help!" she shouted toward the courtyard, but the sound vanished into the storm. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, inside the room. She froze. "Who's there?" A silhouette crossed the far side of the room, too tall to be her father, too solid to be imagination. For an instant, lightning flashed, revealing a man in a dark coat standing near the dresser. His head tilted, studying her. Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs. "James?" No answer. Another flash of light, and the figure was gone. The door unlocked itself with a click. Evelyn backed away, every nerve taut. She forced herself to push it open. The hallway outside was empty, silent except for the steady tick of the grandfather clock below. She ran downstairs, breath ragged, locket clutched in her fist. In the kitchen, a maid was washing dishes, humming softly. Evelyn gripped the edge of the counter. Was anyone upstairs just now? The maid looked up, startled. "No, ma'am. Only you." "Are you sure?" "Yes, ma'am." Her eyes flicked nervously toward the ceiling. "Though sometimes, we hear things too." "What things?" The maid's lips tightened. "Voices. A woman crying. Mr. Pierce says it's the pipes, but I don't think pipes whisper names." Evelyn exhaled slowly. "If you hear anything again, come straight to me. Understand?" The maid nodded quickly, drying her hands. "Yes, Miss Cross." Evelyn went to the drawing room to think. A fire burned low in the grate, shadows flickering like restless hands. She laid the locket on the mantelpiece. The woman inside, Margaret, seemed to look right at her. Same eyes, same defiance. What had Margaret wanted to expose? And why did her father keep demanding forgiveness as though it were the price of something darker? Footsteps approached again, measured, echoing. James appeared in the doorway, a glass of whiskey in hand. You look pale. Ghosts keeping you company? She met his gaze. I was locked on the balcony. Someone was in the room with me. He raised an eyebrow. You're imagining things. The locks in this house stick. Stop lying. He smiled faintly. You sound like her, you know. Like who? Margaret. Always accusing. Always digging where she shouldn't. Evelyn stepped closer. What did you do to her? His smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. Be careful, sister. Father's games don't end when he dies. Sometimes, they just change players. He brushed past her and left. Evelyn stared into the fire, the words echoing in her mind. They just change players. Above her, in the ceiling, came a faint, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against wood. She looked up. The sound was coming from directly above the fireplace. From her father's bedroom. Evelyn took the staircase 2 steps at a time, the old wood moaning under her weight. The tapping from above grew louder with each floor, an impatient, deliberate rhythm. When she reached her father's door, it stopped. She hesitated, hand on the handle. Father? No response. She pushed the door open. The air smelled of sickness and stale incense. Her father lay half upright against his pillows, a book open on his lap. His eyes fluttered open, gray and sharp despite the hollow cheeks. You look terrible, he rasped. You've looked better, she replied. Were you tapping on the floor? He laughed weakly, a sound without warmth. You hear them too, then. Them? The ones that whisper. He turned his head toward the curtained window. They never let me sleep. Evelyn approached slowly. You mean Margaret? His eyes snapped to hers, wild for a second. Don't say her name in this room. Why not? Because she won't stay quiet when you do. Evelyn clenched her fists. You need to tell me the truth, father. What happened to her? He stared past her, as if looking into some private darkness. Margaret was clever. Too clever. She found the ledgers. What ledgers? The money I moved after the fire, he murmured. She thought she could save us. But when she tried to run. He stopped, coughing violently. When she tried to run? Evelyn pressed. He looked up at her, eyes brimming with a strange mix of pride and fear. James stopped her. I only covered it up. Evelyn froze. You're saying James killed her? An accident, he whispered. But one must protect the family name. You'll understand soon. It's your turn now. My turn? He gripped her wrist suddenly, his bony fingers cold as iron. The will is a test, Evelyn. Forgive me, forgive James, forgive them all, and the house will be yours. Fail, and it will bury you like it did her. Why would you? But his grip tightened until she winced. Because we're cursed, he hissed. Forgiveness is the only way out. Then, as abruptly as he'd seized her, he released her hand and slumped back, breath rasping. Evelyn stumbled away, her pulse hammering. Cursed. Forgiveness. Ledgers. Accident. The pieces didn't fit. Not yet. She reached the door, and froze. In the mirror across the room, her father's reflection was still sitting upright, even though the real man behind her had his eyes closed. The mirrored version turned its head and looked straight at her. Her breath caught. Forgive him, it whispered. The lamp on the bedside table flickered and shattered, plunging the room into darkness. By dawn the storm had passed, leaving the world outside silver and still. Evelyn hadn't slept. She sat in the drawing room, staring at the embers while her father's words echoed. She found the ledgers. If Margaret had discovered financial records worth killing for, they had to be somewhere in this house. She began her search with the study. Papers were stacked neatly in drawers: property deeds, shipping manifests, tax receipts, ordinary enough until she noticed a false panel at the back of the lowest drawer. The wood was newer, smoother. She pried it open with a letter opener. Inside lay a thin leather journal bound with string. No title. She opened it carefully. Each page was filled with names and numbers, deposits, offshore accounts, coded initials. At the top of one page, MC, Silence Fund, $250,000. Her pulse spiked. Margaret Cross. Half the entries were dated the year she died. A sound behind her made her snap the book shut. James stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." He nodded toward the drawer. "Find something interesting?" She slid the journal behind her back. "Just old paperwork." He smiled slightly. "Lying never suited you." She glared. "And murder did?" For a heartbeat, his face froze. Then the smile returned, thinner this time. "Careful, Evelyn. Accusations can be dangerous here." He stepped forward, reaching for the drawer. Evelyn rose, blocking his path. "Move," he said softly. "Or what?" He leaned close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Father isn't the only one with conditions in his will." "What does that mean?" "You'll find out when the lawyers do." He left as quietly as he'd come. Evelyn waited until the echo of his footsteps faded, then locked the study door and sat again, breathing hard. She opened the journal once more. Toward the end, one entry stood out. Transfer, MCJC, completed September 14, 90. James Cross. The last page contained a single line, written in a hurried hand. "If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. M." A gust of wind swept through the open window, scattering loose papers across the floor. Evelyn snatched at them, but one slipped under the desk. When she reached for it, her fingers brushed something hard taped beneath the wood, a small brass key. She pulled it free. The number 7 was etched into its handle. For the first time since she'd arrived, Evelyn felt a surge of purpose stronger than fear. Whatever Margaret had hidden, the key would lead to it. She just needed to find lock number 7 before her brothers did. Evelyn spent the morning searching the manor for the number 7. Every corridor seemed to watch her as she passed. The air smelled of wax and memory. The brass key glinted in her pocket, warm against her palm, as though it wanted to be used. She checked the doors she remembered from childhood, the linen closets, the music room, the old nursery. Nothing. Then she climbed to the 3rd floor, where the halls grew narrower and the wallpaper peeled like sunburned skin. At the end of the corridor stood a single wooden door. It was plain except for a small plaque nailed above it. Faded black paint read, 7. Her pulse quickened. But the door had no handle. She pressed her ear to it. Silence. Then, faintly, a slow, steady tock-tock-tock, like a clock somewhere inside. The key slid easily into the small hole where a knob should have been. When she turned it, a soft click echoed through the hallway. The door opened by itself. The room beyond was small, square, and nearly bare. A single chair sat in the center beneath a hanging light bulb. Against the far wall stood a tall grandfather clock that wasn't ticking, but something inside it was. Evelyn stepped closer. Dust lay thick on the floor. Her shoes left clear prints. When she reached the clock, she hesitated. "Margaret," she whispered. The air seemed to shiver. She pulled open the clock's glass face. Inside, the pendulum swayed once, twice, though no mechanism moved. Beneath it, hidden in the hollow base, was a wooden box. She crouched and slid it out. The box was locked with a thin latch, already rusted. The same serpent emblem was carved into its lid. Using the brass key, she turned the latch until it clicked. Inside lay a stack of letters bound with twine and a small cassette tape labeled simply, "Father." Her fingers trembled as she untied the letters. The first was dated August 1990, the week Margaret had died. "Father. I can't stay silent. I know what you did to the accounts, and I know why you made me sign those papers. If James thinks I'll take the blame, he's wrong. I'm leaving tonight. If you ever loved me, don't try to stop me. Margaret." Evelyn felt her chest tighten. A floorboard creaked behind her. She spun around. A shadow moved past the doorway. "Who's there?" she demanded. No answer. She stuffed the letters and tape into her coat and backed into the hall. The door to room 7 swung shut on its own. The lock turned, sealing itself. From inside came a faint, mechanical whirring. Then a woman's voice, recorded, distorted, whispered through the wood. "Don't trust the clocks, Evelyn." Evelyn carried the cassette down to the parlor like it was a living thing. She half expected it to pulse in her hands. The label, "Father," looked smudged, as though someone had touched it recently. The manor still hummed with quiet. Only the wind moved, sighing through the halls. She searched the cabinets until she found an old cassette player buried beneath a pile of yellowed sheet music. Dust coated its surface, but when she plugged it in, the light flickered to life. She slipped in the tape and pressed play. At first, nothing. Then the static cleared and a familiar voice filled the room, her father's, lower and steadier than she remembered. "This is for you, Margaret. If you're listening, you've already disobeyed me. I warned you once not to dig where the past lies buried." Evelyn's hands tightened on the armrest. "Your mother didn't understand sacrifice. She thought love was enough. You, at least, had the strength to see what this family requires. But you betrayed that strength. You signed those papers out of pity. You chose sentiment over legacy." The sound of glass clinking, a slow inhale. "There are debts you cannot imagine. The accounts you discovered aren't theft, they are protection. Without them, Whitestone falls. You think I'm the villain because you've never learned that every empire stands on graves." Static hissed again, like the machine was choking. Then, another voice, faint but desperate. "Father, please." It was Margaret. "You can't keep doing this, people are getting hurt." A sharp crack echoed, something hitting the floor. Her father's voice, quieter now. "Then let the house keep our secrets." The tape stopped abruptly. Evelyn sat frozen, breath shallow. The silence that followed was heavy, alive. She rewound and played it again, but the ending was different this time. No plea, no sound. Only a man's whisper. "You shouldn't have come back, Evelyn." Her blood ran cold. Someone had recorded over it. A floorboard creaked behind her. She turned, half expecting James. But the doorway was empty. The air grew colder, her breath fogging faintly. The fire sputtered. The voice from the tape returned, softer now, not through the speakers but from somewhere near her ear. "Forgive him, and you'll end like me." Evelyn stood quickly, heart pounding. "Margaret?" No answer, only the faint rattle of the cassette inside the machine, spinning on its own though she hadn't touched it. She yanked the cord from the wall. The player went silent. Then, from the grand hall beyond, came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, measured, heavy, approaching. James's voice called out, calm, casual. "Evelyn? We need to talk." She hid the tape inside her coat and braced herself. James stood in the doorway, framed by the fading daylight, his hands tucked neatly into his pockets. Behind him, Michael lingered, expression unreadable. "We're calling a family meeting," James said evenly. "Father insists." Evelyn frowned. "He's barely conscious." "Barely," Michael echoed, swirling a glass of scotch, "but still capable of issuing orders." He rang the bell himself. The mention of the bell made her stomach tighten. The old bronze bell in the hall had been used only for summoning servants, or emergencies. They led her to the dining room. The long mahogany table gleamed beneath the chandelier, set with 3 glasses and a bottle of sherry. Their father sat at the head in his wheelchair, a nurse standing discreetly behind him. "Evelyn," he rasped. "Sit." She obeyed, eyes flicking toward the nurse. The woman's face was blank, almost too still. Her father raised a trembling hand. "My children together again. It has been too long." "You're doing," Michael muttered. Silence. The old man's voice cracked like a whip. "I have something to say before I die." James leaned forward, voice measured. "Perhaps we can discuss the estate arrangements privately, Father." Without Evelyn?" The old man smiled thinly. "She is the arrangement." Evelyn tensed. "What do you mean?" "You have all sinned against this house," he said, each word a struggle. "Only forgiveness will cleanse it. The one who truly forgives shall inherit everything. The others, nothing." Michael's jaw clenched. "You're pitting us against each other for sport?" "I'm testing you," their father said. "To see which of you deserves Whitestone." James's smile was polite but cold. "And how will you decide which of us forgives best?" The old man's eyes glinted. "The house will decide." A silence fell so deep Evelyn could hear the rain starting again outside. "You're insane," Michael muttered. Their father's lips curved faintly. "Perhaps. But the will is already signed. The executor will see to it." Evelyn looked at Pierce, who stood in the corner, stone-faced. "You agreed to this madness?" He didn't answer, only adjusted his glasses. The nurse poured sherry for each of them. The liquid caught the chandelier's light like blood. "To forgiveness," their father whispered. They all raised their glasses reluctantly. Evelyn took a cautious sip, bitter, metallic, wrong. Then her father said softly, "If you seek truth, look where Margaret fell." Lightning flashed outside. Evelyn set down her glass. "What do you mean?" But his eyes had closed. The nurse touched his wrist, then looked up. "He's sleeping." No, he wasn't. Evelyn saw the stillness in his chest, the final slackness of the mouth. Her father was dead. Michael exhaled. "So ends the game." "No," James said quietly, his eyes fixed on Evelyn. "It's just beginning." The bronze bell in the great hall rang again, even though no one had touched it. Its heavy tone rolled through the manor like thunder. Evelyn sat frozen at the dining table, staring at her father's lifeless body. James had gone pale, Michael was already pacing, muttering curses under his breath. Arthur Pierce moved toward the bell rope. "It's tradition," he said quietly. "The bell rings to announce a passing." "But who pulled it?" Evelyn asked. Pierce's eyes flicked toward the nurse, only she wasn't standing anymore. The chair where she'd been moments ago was empty. Michael swore. Where the hell did she go? Evelyn rose. Maybe to call the doctor. No phone works in this place, James muttered. Not without Father's line. The bell tolled again, once, twice, then stopped. Someone's in the hall, Pierce whispered. Evelyn walked toward the doorway, her heart drumming. The corridor was empty. But as she passed beneath the bell, something dripped onto her hand. A dark drop of liquid. She looked up. The bell's inner edge glistened red. Blood, she breathed. Michael backed away. That's impossible. The chandelier flickered overhead. The nurse's voice echoed faintly from the landing above. He's not gone yet. They all turned. She stood at the top of the stairs, white uniform smeared crimson at the cuffs. Her eyes were wide, distant. He said he'll ring again when it's time. When what's time? Evelyn called. The nurse tilted her head. For forgiveness. Then she turned and walked up the hall, vanishing around the corner. James exhaled shakily. I told you this house breathes. Pierce crossed himself. I'll call the authorities. Stay here. He hurried toward the phone room. Evelyn looked at her father one last time. The faintest smile had settled on his lips. She leaned closer. For a second, she could swear she saw his fingers twitch. Later, when the doctor arrived, he confirmed the death and signed the papers, but his hands trembled as he spoke. I don't understand the discoloration around his mouth. Did he drink anything recently? Evelyn remembered the sherry. Yes. The doctor nodded grimly. Then I'll need a sample. It looks chemical. Poison. James laughed softly, hollow. Poetic, isn't it? The man who poisoned everything poisoned himself. Evelyn turned toward him. Or someone helped him. The room fell silent. Michael set his glass down slowly. Careful, sister. You're starting to sound like Margaret. She stared at both of them, her pulse hammering. Maybe that's what he wanted. Maybe that's why he brought us back, to finish what she started. The bell rang one final time. This time, no one dared move. They gathered in the study the next morning. Rain had returned, streaking the windows with dull silver. Arthur Pierce sat behind the desk, papers stacked neatly before him. The wax seal on the top page was already broken. Evelyn, James, and Michael waited in brittle silence while the attorney adjusted his glasses. This is the final testament of Charles Whitestone Cross, he began. It was signed and witnessed 2 weeks ago. He read. To my children, I leave what they deserve, and nothing they have not earned. For 30 days after my death, the heirs must remain at Whitestone Manor and complete the terms of forgiveness. If at the end of that period reconciliation is not achieved, the entire estate shall pass to the beneficiary chosen by the house itself. Evelyn frowned. The house can't choose a beneficiary. Pierce hesitated. Your father insisted on the language. I warned him it was legally meaningless, but he was adamant. James leaned back in his chair. Typical. Even dead, he's still playing God. Michael poured himself another drink. So we're prisoners for a month. Pierce cleared his throat. He also left personal letters for each of you. To be opened privately. He handed them out. Evelyn's envelope was heavier than the others. Her name was written in her father's precise, looping script. She didn't open it yet. What happens if one of us leaves? The will becomes void, Pierce said. The inheritance defaults to charity. Convenient, James muttered. He's making us stay here with our ghosts. Evelyn finally broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper. Forgive what you do not understand. Seek the truth beneath the floor where time stands still. Beneath it lay a small silver watch, stopped at 11:07. She stared at the unmoving hands. What does this mean? Pierce glanced at it. That was your mother's watch, I believe. My mother's? Evelyn whispered. I thought it was lost in the fire. James's voice softened. That fire wasn't an accident either. Evelyn looked up sharply. What are you talking about? He gave a humorless smile. Ask Pierce about the insurance money. Pierce's jaw tightened. Mr. Cross, this is not the time. Oh, I think it is. James rose. Father made you executor because you kept his secrets. Maybe you can keep ours too. The air thickened. Evelyn clutched the watch in her palm. It felt almost warm. Somewhere above them, a clock chimed once, though no hour had turned. Pierce gathered the will. The law requires you all to stay on the grounds for 30 days. I suggest you make peace. He left, closing the door softly. Evelyn turned to her brothers. What really happened in that fire? Michael met her eyes over the rim of his glass. You'll wish you never asked. Evelyn took the silver watch to her room that night. It lay on her bedside table, its cracked face gleaming in the lamplight. The hands were still frozen at 11:07, no matter how much she wound the crown. She held it to her ear. Nothing. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the wind carried faint whispers through the halls. She thought about her father's letter, seek the truth beneath the floor where time stands still. Her eyes drifted to the wooden floorboards under her bed. The house creaked softly, as if listening. Kneeling, she ran her fingers along the seams between the boards. One plank felt loose. When she pried it up, a draft of cold air brushed her face. Beneath the plank lay a shallow compartment, lined with dust and something metallic. Another watch, older, gold instead of silver, and beneath it, a folded piece of paper stained with age. Her heart pounded as she unfolded it. 11:07 p.m. She begged him to stop. He said it was mercy. No signature, no date. The words blurred as her hand trembled. Mercy. That was the word her father had used when he spoke of forgiveness. She pressed the silver watch against the gold one. For a second, the air seemed to hum. Then, click. Both second hands twitched. The gold watch began ticking again, slow but steady. At the same instant, the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 11 times. Evelyn's breath caught. She looked at her alarm clock. It was only 10:30. She stepped into the hall. The lights flickered, the wallpaper's shadows rippling like waves. At the far end of the corridor, the figure of a young woman stood, dark curls, white dress, her outline faint but unmistakable. Margaret? Evelyn whispered. The woman turned her head slowly. Her eyes were hollow, her face both kind and mournful. She raised one hand and pointed downward. Evelyn followed the gesture. The floor beneath the hallway rug bulged slightly, as if concealing something underneath. When she looked up again, Margaret was gone. Evelyn rushed forward, pulling back the rug. A small square hatch was hidden beneath it, carved with the same serpent insignia that haunted the manor. The gold watch ticked louder in her pocket, almost urging her on. She hesitated, her hand hovering above the latch. Behind her, James's voice cut through the silence. You shouldn't be down here. She spun around. He stood in the doorway, face shadowed. How long have you been watching me? She demanded. He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the hatch. Long enough to know that not every secret deserves to be dug up. Evelyn gripped the latch. Then this one must be. She pulled it open. A blast of cold air rushed out, air that smelled of ash and old blood. And beneath the floor, in the flickering light, she saw the outline of stairs leading down. The hatch yawned open, exhaling a breath of cold that smelled of rust and stone. Evelyn leaned over, holding the lamp above the narrow stairs. The light dissolved into black before it reached the bottom. James's voice was tight behind her. "You don't even know what's down there." "That's why I'm going," she said. He caught her wrist. "You think Father didn't try to keep us away for a reason? Let it rot." She pulled free. "Everything in this house already has." The first step groaned as she descended. The air grew damp, heavy, carrying the metallic tang of old blood and water. The deeper she went, the more she heard it, soft dripping, and beneath that, a rhythm like a heartbeat. At the bottom she found herself in a wide stone chamber. Shelves lined the walls, wine racks, crumbling ledgers, broken bottles. This had once been a cellar. Now it looked like a vault for sins. The beam of her lamp caught something on the far wall, carvings. Names, scratched into the stone. Some she recognized, servants, distant relatives, but one stopped her heart. Margaret Cross. 1990. She touched the name lightly. The stone beneath her fingers was cold, almost pulsing. Behind her, something scraped. She turned fast. A door she hadn't seen before was swinging open at the far end, revealing another small chamber lit by a single, quivering candle. "Evelyn," a voice whispered from inside. She stepped closer, the lamp trembling in her hand. A woman sat in the chair by the candle, her face obscured by shadow. For a heartbeat Evelyn thought she was alive. Then the light steadied, revealing the pale porcelain of a mannequin dressed in a white gown. A wig of dark curls hung over its shoulders. Around its neck gleamed a locket identical to hers. On the table beside it lay a framed photo, Margaret smiling between her father and James. Someone had arranged this shrine deliberately. Recently. Footsteps descended behind her. "Curiosity always did run in the family," James said, stepping into the light. Evelyn turned on him, voice shaking. "What is this?" He looked at the mannequin as though seeing an old friend. "A reminder." "Of what?" "That some daughters never learn their place." He reached for the locket around the mannequin's neck, but Evelyn stepped between them. "She wrote a note," she said. "Saying if anything happened, it wasn't an accident. You and Father covered it up." His expression didn't change. "Then maybe you should have stayed gone." The candle flickered violently, throwing their shadows across the walls. For an instant, Margaret's carved name seemed to glow. James's hand twitched toward his pocket. Evelyn lifted the lamp higher. "What are you hiding?" He smiled faintly. "Only what's left of your inheritance." And then the candle went out. Darkness swallowed the cellar. Evelyn's lamp flickered once, then steadied, barely. The air felt different now, thicker, heavy with the scent of smoke. "James," she shouted. Her voice bounced off the walls. No answer. Something scraped nearby. She spun toward the sound, nothing but the slow trickle of water down the stone. When she turned back, the mannequin was gone. The chair where it had been sat empty, the candle beside it still smoking. Only the faint outline of feet in the dust marked that anything had stood there. Evelyn's chest tightened. She backed toward the stairs, keeping the lamp up. Then she saw the door, half hidden behind a rack of wine bottles. It was iron, scorched black, the hinges melted slightly as though from intense heat. On its surface, faint letters had been carved by hand. "Fire cleanses what blood cannot." Her fingers trembled as she touched the handle. It was cold. Locked. The brass key from before, it was still in her coat pocket. She tried it. The lock turned easily. The door swung open, and a wave of air hit her face, warm, foul, alive. Inside, she saw the remnants of what looked like an old furnace. Charred wood, rusted metal, piles of ash. But under the ash gleamed something metallic, boxes, half melted and fused to the floor. She crouched, brushing soot away with her sleeve. A faint inscription emerged on one box. Insurance, 1990. She froze. The fire. A second box lay beside it, intact. She forced the lid open. Inside were rows of sealed envelopes, bank documents, and a photograph, her mother holding Margaret as a baby. The back of the photo read, "For the daughter he'll never claim." Her stomach twisted. Behind her, the cellar door creaked. "Find what you were looking for?" James's voice drawled from the stairs. Evelyn straightened slowly, clutching the photo. "You killed her. Didn't you?" He stepped closer, torchlight carving his face into hard angles. "She wasn't supposed to die. Father wanted her silenced. She threatened to go to the police about the ledgers. And you helped him burn it all." His eyes darkened. "He said it would save us." "Save us from what?" James hesitated, jaw tight. "From the curse she brought on this house. From what she—" The furnace roared to life. Flames burst from its belly, licking the stone walls. Evelyn stumbled back. "What did you do?" "I didn't." He looked as shocked as she was. The firelight illuminated the far corner. Margaret's mannequin stood there again, untouched by flame, her eyes glowing faintly gold. The same whisper filled the cellar, louder now, coming from every wall. "Forgiveness burns." Evelyn grabbed the box of documents and ran for the stairs. Behind her, the cellar blazed, the fire roaring like laughter. When she reached the top, she slammed the hatch shut and fell to the floor, choking on ash. The gold watch in her pocket ticked once, and stopped. Evelyn crawled backward from the hatch, coughing as gray smoke seeped through the cracks. Her lungs burned, her hands black with soot. From beneath the floor came the roar of fire, spreading fast and hungry. James staggered up beside her, face streaked with ash. "You brought this on us. You lit the match years ago," she gasped. He reached for her, but she swung the brass lamp, catching him across the arm. He stumbled, cursing, and she ran. The manor's corridors were thick with haze. Flames licked the lower walls, their glow pulsing like the house's heartbeat. Portraits blistered in their frames. Evelyn clutched the metal box against her chest, the proof, the truth, the one thing that might end this madness. As she ran, she passed the parlor. The cassette player still sat on the table. Without thinking, she snatched it and the tape labeled Father, shoving both into the box. The grand staircase loomed ahead. Smoke poured down from above. "Evelyn." It was Michael, shouting from the landing. His shirt was half-buttoned, his eyes wild. "What did you do?" "Get out. The cellar's on fire." He took one look behind her and turned pale. "You don't understand, the gas lines." An explosion shook the floor. The chandelier shattered, raining glass. Evelyn shielded her face, then grabbed the banister and climbed toward him. "Help me," she shouted. "We have to get Father's nurse, she's still here." Michael's expression twisted. "The nurse? She left hours ago." "No, I saw her." "She was never hired," he interrupted. "Father dismissed the staff last week. Whoever you saw wasn't real." Evelyn's knees weakened. But she spoke to us. Another tremor rocked the house. A beam crashed down between them, flames surging higher. Get to the east exit, Michael shouted. It's the only way out. She turned, coughing, and forced herself down the hallway. The gold watch ticked once in her pocket, then again, faster this time, in rhythm with her heartbeat. The walls seemed to breathe. With every step, whispers chased her, Margaret's voice among them, clearer now. Don't run from it, Evelyn. Finish it. She stumbled into the dining room. The long table burned at one end, the glasses melting into amber puddles. Her father's wheelchair stood empty, untouched by the flames. And then she heard the bell, 3 slow tolls echoing from above, though the rope hung still. Smoke coiled through the chandelier's remains, shaping faint silhouettes, a woman, a man, a child. For an instant, they formed a family she recognized and didn't, her parents, Margaret, and a younger version of herself. The vision flickered. Her father's voice whispered from nowhere and everywhere. Forgive me, and the house will rest. Evelyn clutched the locket around her neck, eyes stinging. No, she whispered. Not forgiveness, truth. She turned toward the east corridor, fire closing in from every side. Behind her, the bell tolled one last time, and the manor groaned like a dying beast. The manor's east corridor was choking with smoke. Evelyn pressed her sleeve to her mouth, stumbling forward through the haze. The gold watch in her pocket ticked frantically, as though time itself was warning her to hurry. Through the smoke she saw movement, a figure staggering toward her. For one terrible heartbeat, she thought it was Margaret again, the ghost come to claim her. But it was Michael, coughing and burned, his eyes streaming. You have to get out, he shouted. The fires reached the east wing. Not yet, Evelyn rasped. There's something I need to see. Evelyn, you're going to die in here. She ignored him and turned down the final hallway, the one that led to her father's private office, the room that had always been locked, the room no one was allowed to enter. The heat followed her like a living thing. The brass doorknob was hot to the touch, but she pushed through. The office was half lit, half consumed by flame. On the desk lay a half-burned photograph, her mother, holding a baby. But it wasn't Evelyn. The baby had Margaret's eyes. Her breath caught. Behind the photo was a file, edges singed, stamped with the family's crest, Whitestone Holdings, confidential. Inside were legal documents, birth records, medical reports, and one adoption certificate. Her name, Evelyn Cross, had been added years later, in different handwriting. A faint voice echoed behind her. I told you not to look. She turned. Her father stood in the doorway, gaunt and spectral in the firelight, as though the flames had carved him from ash. You're alive, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Alive enough to end this. What did you do to her? I saved her, he said, stepping forward. And I saved you. Margaret's child was never meant to survive. Your mother made me promise to keep her secret. So I made you mine. Evelyn shook her head, tears cutting streaks through the soot on her cheeks. You lied to everyone. You let her die for that lie. She wanted peace, he said quietly. And I gave it to her. A crash split the ceiling. Fire poured in, devouring the shelves. Evelyn lunged for the desk, grabbing the adoption file. You gave her silence, she spat. Not peace. Evelyn. She ran past him into the hallway, the file clutched tight. Behind her, the office erupted, the flames swallowing her father's final words. Michael caught her at the end of the corridor, dragging her toward the east exit. Come on. Through the cracked window she could see the vineyards blazing, a sea of orange and black. The manor groaned one last time, ancient beams giving way. As they burst through the doors into the cold night, the roof collapsed behind them with a sound like thunder. Evelyn turned to watch the only home she'd ever known burn to the ground, taking decades of secrets with it. But in her hands, the truth still lived. The night swallowed the fire's glow, leaving the world in shades of smoke and orange embers. Evelyn stood trembling at the edge of the vineyard, the box of documents pressed to her chest. Behind her, Whitestone Manor collapsed in a cascade of sparks, the serpent crest above the door twisting in the heat until it melted. Michael sat a few feet away on the gravel drive, coughing weakly. His face was gray with ash. "It's over," he whispered. "No," Evelyn said softly, staring at the burning silhouette. "It's only over when the truth is told." The gold watch in her pocket ticked once. She looked down at it. Its hands had moved again, forward now, to 11:10. Time was running again. Michael glanced at the box. "What's that?" "Proof," she said. "Of everything Father did. The ledgers. The accounts. The adoption papers." He stared at her. "Adoption? I wasn't his daughter," she said quietly. "I was Margaret's." Michael's expression froze, shock overtaking exhaustion. "That's impossible." She handed him one of the charred pages. "It's all here. He took me after the fire, gave me Mother's name, and made everyone believe I was his child." Michael's hand shook. "Then what does that make us?" "Half-brother and half-sister. Maybe less." He exhaled shakily. "So Margaret's death wasn't an accident," Evelyn finished. "It was to hide me. To erase what he did." The night air trembled with distant sirens. She could see the reflection of flames in Michael's eyes. He looked down at his hands, voice low. "James knew, didn't he?" Evelyn nodded. "He was the one who found out first. That's why he stayed loyal to Father. They built their empire on the lie." Michael's jaw clenched. "Then he's not done. He'll find a way to twist this too. Not if I get there first." She turned toward the long driveway, where headlights glowed faintly through the smoke. Arthur Pierce's car, returning. Michael rose unsteadily. "What are you going to do?" "Tell the truth," she said. "Even if it kills what's left of this family." The sirens grew louder. Wind swept through the vineyard, scattering ash like snow. Evelyn could hear faint whispers again, Margaret's voice, softer now, almost content. "Now you know, Evelyn. Let it end." She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling tears mix with soot on her face. "I will," she murmured. Pierce's car stopped beside them. He stepped out, coat billowing, his face pale as he took in the inferno. "Good God, what happened?" "Justice," Evelyn said. Pierce's eyes flicked to the box in her arms. "You found it?" "Yes. And I'm taking it to the police." He hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Once you do this, Whitestone is finished." Evelyn looked back at the collapsing manor, the ghosts, the greed, the curse, and finally felt the weight lift. "That's the point," she said. The first light of dawn touched the horizon as Evelyn stood by the burned ruins of Whitestone Manor. Smoke still curled upward in thin gray ribbons, carrying the last breath of everything that had haunted her family for decades. The sirens had stopped. The police had come and gone, leaving only silence and the crackle of dying embers. Arthur Pierce stood beside her, his coat ash-streaked. "They'll contact you soon," he said quietly. "Those documents will change everything. The papers alone are enough to open 4 fraud investigations." Evelyn barely heard him. Her eyes were fixed on the spot where her mother's study used to be, the place where it all began. "It's strange," she murmured. "All those years I wanted to understand why she looked at me with such distance. And now I know." She was looking at her sister's child. Pierce nodded gently. "And yet, you're the only one who had her courage." She didn't respond. The air was cool, the morning sharp. A few surviving vines shivered in the wind. Behind them, a figure appeared through the mist, James. His clothes were scorched, his face streaked with soot, eyes hollow. Two officers trailed behind, keeping distance. "Evelyn," he rasped. "It didn't have to end like this." She turned to him, her voice calm. "Yes, it did." He took a faltering step forward. "You don't understand what he made me do. He threatened everything. I only wanted—" "You wanted control," she interrupted. "Just like him. And now you have ashes." James's lip trembled. "We're all that's left of this family." "No," she said softly. "We're what's left because of this family." The officers stepped in, taking him by the arm. He didn't resist. As they led him away, he looked back once more, eyes full of something that might have been regret, or fear. When the cars disappeared down the road, Evelyn finally exhaled. For the first time in her life, the air around her felt clean. Pierce placed a hand on her shoulder. "What will you do now?" She looked toward the sun, which was rising behind the blackened manor, painting the ruins gold. "Start over," she said. "Without lies. Without ghosts." He smiled faintly. "And without Whitestone?" Evelyn looked at the charred vines and the cracked serpent crest lying in the dirt. Whitestone was never a home. Just a cage with velvet walls. She reached into her coat and pulled out the gold watch. It had stopped again, 11:59, 1 minute to a new day. She placed it on a stone near the ruins. "For her," she whispered. As the morning wind rose, she heard it again, Margaret's voice, soft and distant. "Thank you, Evelyn. We can rest now." Evelyn closed her eyes and smiled through her tears. The flames were gone. The house was gone. But she, Margaret's daughter, the secret child who survived the fire, was still standing. And for the first time, she felt truly alive. Spring sunlight filtered through lace curtains, painting golden squares on Evelyn's kitchen floor. The cottage was small, half the size of her old bedroom at Whitestone, but it was hers, every inch of it free from ghosts and inheritance. A newspaper lay open on the table beside her tea. The headline read, "Whitestone Scandal, Cross Family Accounts Frozen as Fraud Inquiry Expands." She folded the paper and smiled faintly. Justice had been slow, but relentless. The courts had seized every trace of the fortune her father built from deceit. James was serving a sentence for obstruction. The Cross name was finally what it always should have been, buried. Outside, the world looked clean again. Children played on the hill, laughter replacing the silence that once haunted her dreams. On the counter sat an envelope, cream paper, unmarked. She hadn't heard the postman. Inside was a photograph, Whitestone Manor before the fire, its windows glowing at dusk. Written on the back, in neat, careful script. "Forgiveness is never the end. It's the beginning. M." Her pulse quickened. Margaret's handwriting, identical. Impossible. She ran her thumb along the ink, fresh enough to smudge. The gold watch she'd left at the ruins a year ago lay on the table beside her tea. Except, she hadn't brought it here. The hands had moved again. 12:01. A whisper drifted through the open window, soft as the spring breeze. Evelyn. She froze, turning slowly toward the garden. Among the rows of lilies, the sunlight bent, just slightly, as if someone invisible had brushed past the petals. Evelyn's breath hitched. Her heart pounded, but it wasn't fear, it was understanding. She stepped to the doorway and whispered back, "Rest now." The air settled. The watch ticked once, then stopped forever. Evelyn returned to her chair, a tear tracing her cheek. For the first time, the silence felt gentle, not hollow. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of smoke, but only for a moment. And far in the distance, where Whitestone once stood, a single flame flickered and went out.